Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today, we're going to be taking a look at something that you all picked out about human behavior and social responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about the bystander effect.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be looking at this through some research that was done over at stokit.new.
Yeah, it's a really cool platform.
I was just reading up on it
Yeah.
before we started. And it's really fascinating how they use AI to kind of get these discussions going.
Yeah, and it's a really fascinating approach. They curate all these articles, and then they use AI and algorithms to really facilitate these discussions between people.
Yeah.
And it allows people to really kind of explore these issues and see these different perspectives and hopefully come up with some solutions.
Absolutely. And, it's not just about awareness. It's about what we do with that awareness.
Exactly.
And this research that you flagged really brings up some tough questions.
Mm-hmm.
It all starts with these Panda films.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to give too much away. But they involve these staged scenarios of violence in public places.
Right.
And the really shocking thing is how few people actually stepped in to help.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
But before we even get into that, I want to ask you,
Sure.
have you ever been in a situation where you just weren't sure if you should step in or not?
Oh, yeah. I think we all have.
Like, maybe you saw someone who needed help,
Right.
but you hesitated for whatever reason.
Absolutely. And I think, those moments of hesitation really kind of tap into what we call the bystander effect.
Okay.
And it's this fascinating phenomenon in psychology where the presence of others actually makes us less likely to help someone in need.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
So these Panda films, they show that even in situations of violence, people often don't act.
Right.
But the bystander effect, it isn't limited to those extreme cases, is it?
No, not at all. It can show up in all sorts of everyday situations, like seeing someone collapse or, maybe someone struggling to get up, or even just if someone is appearing distressed or something like that.
Right.
The research really highlights how pervasive it is.
So why do we freeze up?
Right.
When we're surrounded by other people, you would think that a larger group would mean a higher chance of someone helping.
Yeah.
But it seems like the opposite is true.
Right. It's almost this paradox, isn't it? And there's a lot of different psychological factors that come into play to kind of explain why this happens.
Okay.
But one of the major culprits is what we call diffusion of responsibility.
Okay.
And so it's kind of like, when you're in a big meeting with a lot of people and everybody just assumes that someone else is going to take notes.
Oh, yeah.
And because no one feels personally accountable,
Right.
no one takes action.
Yeah. I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
It's easy to fall into that trap of thinking, oh, someone else will call for help or someone else will
Right.
do something about it.
What if everyone's thinking that?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where things get really dangerous.
Exactly.
So then you have fear.
Yeah.
Plain and simple fear for your own personal safety.
Especially if you know
Especially
this situation is volatile.
if the situation seems really dangerous.
Right.
It's easy to kind of second guess yourself like, oh,
Yeah.
what if I make things worse?
Right. What if I get hurt?
Exactly. Yeah. What if I get hurt?
There's a lot of unknowns.
So then there's also that fear of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Is this really an emergency?
Am I misreading the situation?
Am I misreading the situation?
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the fear of social disapproval.
Oh, yeah.
No one wants to look foolish
Nobody wants to overreact.
in front of other people.
Oh.
Oh, the dreaded fear of social awkwardness.
We've all been there.
We've all been there, yeah.
I think.
It's like watching someone trip and fall,
Uh-huh.
and you want to help them up, but you also don't want to embarrass them
Right.
if
Exactly.
they're okay.
Yeah. And then.
So then, of course, we have our modern day culprit.
Oh, yeah.
Distraction.
Distraction.
We're constantly bombarded with information.
Yeah.
We're constantly rushing from one thing to the next,
We're so busy.
you
Yeah.
know? And it's so easy to just get caught up in our own little bubbles that we totally miss
Yeah.
the cues that someone might need help.
Exactly.
So it's like this perfect storm of fears and distractions that keep us from acting.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it.
It's interesting because the research actually points to that.
It does.
It's like we almost have a handy acronym
Mm-hmm.
that we can use to remember all of these factors.
I love this.
We can call it the 5 fears of intervention:
The 5 fears.
diffusion, danger,
Yeah.
doubt, disapproval, and distraction.
Oh, I love that.
Catchy.
Right? Catchy. Yeah.
It really drives home the point.
It's a
It's that there are all these different forces at play.
Right.
It's not just that we don't care.
It's not about apathy.
Yeah.
It's much more complex.
And understanding those fears is the first step towards overcoming them.
It is. And, it's important to remember that this isn't just about individual psychology.
Right.
The bystander effect has some pretty profound societal implications, too.
That's a great point, yeah. It's not just about us as individuals freezing up. It's about what happens when that becomes like a pattern across society.
Right.
What are we risking
Yeah.
when we collectively look away from these situations?
Well, the research paints a pretty stark picture when we consistently choose passivity over action.
Yeah.
It really starts to erode the fabric of trust that holds society together.
Right. Like it creates this sense of isolation.
Yeah.
Like everyone's just fending for themselves.
Everyone for themselves.
And that can be really dangerous,
But
especially
in emergency situations.
like, in cases of medical emergencies,
Oh, absolutely.
like cardiac arrest or stroke.
Yeah, those first few minutes are absolutely critical.
The article mentioned that every minute counts.
Every minute counts.
Intervention, even just calling for help,
Just calling 911.
can dramatically increase someone's chances of survival.
It really can.
But if everyone's just standing around, caught in that bystander effect,
Right. And assuming someone else is going to act.
assuming someone else is going to do it,
Yeah, those precious minutes just slip away.
it's terrifying to think about
It is.
the real-world consequences
Yeah.
of inaction,
Yeah.
especially in those life or death situations.
Uh-huh.
But even beyond, like, the immediate danger,
Right.
it seems like this kind of collective apathy could have, like, a ripple effect
It does.
on society as a whole.
It really does. When people feel like they can't rely on others for help,
Right.
they become more fearful, they become more withdrawn,
Yeah.
and it can really lead to this breakdown in social cohesion,
Okay.
which makes it much harder to address collective challenges
Right.
and build strong communities.
So it's not just about, like, individual acts of courage
Yeah.
or cowardice.
It's about the kind of society we're creating.
It's the kind of society we create.
Yeah, through our collective choices.
And I think what's so unsettling about this is that it often operates on a subconscious level.
It does.
Like, we don't even realize we're doing it
We don't.
until it's too late.
Until it's too late. And that's the insidious nature of it.
Yeah.
It preys on our very deeply ingrained social instincts.
Oh, yeah.
We're wired to conform.
Right.
We want to avoid standing out from the crowd.
To fit in.
Yeah. But that can be incredibly dangerous when it prevents us from doing what we know is right.
So how do we break free
Right.
from this pattern?
That's the big question.
The article mentions Good Samaritan laws as one potential solution, making it a legal obligation to help someone in need.
Right.
But I have some mixed feelings about that.
Yeah, it's a complex issue. And,
Yeah.
On the one hand, it does send this clear message that society values intervention
Right.
and that we have this duty to protect one another. But then on the other hand, some people argue that you can't legislate morality.
Right. Can you really force someone to be a good person?
Exactly. And what about those situations where intervening could actually put the bystander themselves at risk?
Those are really great points. It's like this tricky balance to strike.
It is.
But beyond laws and regulations, are there other ways to kind of cultivate a more proactive and compassionate society?
Yeah, I think so.
What about, like, education and training?
Oh, absolutely. I think knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And that applies to bystander intervention as well.
Cool.
Just imagine if everybody had basic first aid training,
Right.
or if they knew how to effectively call for help in an emergency, or even just if we had all, discussed the bystander effect, back in school.
Right.
I think that knowledge could really empower people to act even when they're feeling afraid or uncertain.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
So instead of freezing up, they have the tools and the confidence to do something.
Exactly.
It's about moving from feeling helpless
Yeah.
to feeling empowered.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And it's not even just about practical skills.
Right.
It's about cultivating a mindset
Yes.
of empathy and courage.
Exactly.
What if we actively celebrated
Yes.
stories of everyday heroism?
What if we encouraged kids?
What if we encouraged our kids to speak up when they see something wrong,
Yes. Even if it feels uncomfortable.
even if it feels awkward?
Right?
It's about shifting those social norms
It is.
so that intervening becomes the expected behavior,
Right.
not the exception.
The norm.
We need to make it cool to be an upstander,
I love that.
not a bystander.
Yeah.
And I think technology could play a role here too.
Oh, I was just thinking the same thing.
Really?
Yeah, imagine an app
Okay.
that could instantly connect people in need
Yeah.
with nearby volunteers or first responders,
Right.
or a platform that allows people to anonymously report dangerous situations or share information about potential emergencies.
It's like crowdsourcing safety,
It is.
like
Yeah.
a neighborhood watch.
but powered by technology.
Yeah, exactly.
Could that really work?
I think so. It's already being tested in some places.
Wow.
And, these networks could even be integrated with emergency services
Okay.
so that first responders are getting real-time information,
Yeah.
potentially saving, crucial time.
That's incredible. But I do wonder, with any new tech, are there potential downsides?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's crucial that we design these systems ethically.
Yeah.
They need to be accessible to everyone.
Right.
They need to prioritize privacy and security.
Mm-hmm.
And they really need to strengthen community bonds rather than creating new divisions.
It's like anything powerful, we have to use it wisely.
We do.
But stepping away from tech for a second, perhaps the most radical idea is simply believing in our own capacity for good.
I think you're absolutely right.
Mhm.
It's about trusting that people are inherently compassionate
Yeah.
and capable of courage.
We can't let cynicism or fear paralyze us.
It's like choosing to focus on the possibility of positive change.
Mm.
Rather than getting bogged down by all the reasons why it might not work.
Yeah.
It's a mindset shift.
It is. And as we wrap up this part of the deep dive,
Okay.
I think it's worth emphasizing that we don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
This is a complex issue with no easy fixes.
Right.
But the fact that we're having this conversation, that we're starting to recognize our own tendencies towards passivity,
Right.
is a huge step in the right direction.
I completely agree. It's about being more mindful of our own reactions.
Yeah.
More aware of the forces that are at play.
Right.
And more willing to challenge those ingrained social instincts
Yeah.
that can sometimes lead us astray.
Exactly. And before we move on,
Okay.
I want to hear from you.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on all of this?
Have you ever experienced the bystander effect firsthand?
What steps do you think we can take both individually and collectively
Yeah.
to create a more proactive and compassionate world?
Share your stories with us. And your ideas with us over on social media using the hashtag #DeepDiveCourage.
Yeah, we would love to hear from you.
So welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been talking about the bystander effect. Why we sometimes hesitate to help someone in need, especially when other people are around.
Yeah, it's been a great discussion so far. We've talked about the psychology behind it, the impact it has on society.
Right.
And we even brainstormed some potential solutions like, those Good Samaritan laws and the power of education and training.
And before the break, we even asked you to
Yeah.
think about times that you've experienced this and what steps we can take to create a more proactive and compassionate world.
Absolutely. And we encourage you to keep sharing those thoughts with us on social media using #DeepDiveCourage.
Yeah.
But for this final part, I kind of want to push our thinking even further.
Fine.
What are some almost radical ideas
Okay.
that could really shift our culture towards helping the norm, not the exception?
Okay. I'm all ears. What kind of radical ideas are we talking about here?
Well, one idea that's gaining some traction is actually bringing bystander intervention training into the workplace.
Okay.
So imagine if every employee, was equipped to recognize and address things like harassment or discrimination, or even just a coworker who's, visibly struggling with something.
Yeah, like building that support system right into the fabric of work life.
Exactly. And it wouldn't just be about stopping bad things from happening. It would also be about creating a culture where people feel safe, both asking for help and offering it to others.
It makes the workplace feel less transactional and more human.
Exactly. It shifts the focus from individual responsibility to this idea of collective care.
I love that. So instead of thinking, that's not my problem,
Yeah.
it becomes, we're in this together.
Exactly.
So taking a step back to more of a community level,
Yeah.
what other radical ideas are out there?
Well, think about community-based safety networks.
Okay.
What if neighborhoods were connected through, apps or platforms
Right.
that allowed them to quickly share information about emergencies or request help, or even just check in on each other?
It's like crowdsourcing safety, like a neighborhood watch, but with technology.
Exactly.
Could that really work?
I think so. It's already being tested in some places.
Wow.
And these networks could even be integrated with emergency services so that first responders are getting real-time information,
Yeah.
potentially saving crucial time in those situations.
That's incredible. But I do wonder, with any new technology, are there potential downsides that we need to consider?
Oh, absolutely. It's crucial to design these systems ethically.
Right.
They need to be accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
They need to prioritize privacy and security. And they really need to strengthen community bonds rather than, creating new divisions.
Right. It's like anything powerful, we have to use it wisely.
We do.
But stepping away from tech for a second,
Yeah.
perhaps the most radical idea
Mm-hmm.
is simply believing in our capacity for good.
I think you're absolutely right. It's about trusting that people are inherently compassionate and capable of courage.
Yeah, we can't let cynicism or fear paralyze us.
We can't.
It's like choosing to focus on the possibility of positive change
Right.
rather than getting bogged down in all the reasons why things might not work.
Yeah, it's a mindset shift.
Exactly.
And as we wrap up this deep dive into the bystander effect,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with this thought. The next time you find yourself in a situation where someone might need help, remember this conversation.
Yeah.
Remember the bystander effect.
Mm-hmm.
And remember that you have the power to break this cycle.
You have the power to be the one who steps up, who speaks out, who makes a difference.
It might not always be easy,
Yeah.
but it's always worth it.
It is, because even the smallest act of courage can ripple outward, impacting not just those involved, but the very fabric of our society.
Well said.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the bystander effect.
Yes, thank you.
We hope it's inspired you to be more mindful,
More courage.
more courageous, and more connected to the world around you.
Absolutely.
Until next time, stay curious
Stay compassionate.
and stay courageous.
Yeah.